What's up guys, it's Dono. So I got a question that is about how you can make the voice in your head when you're rapping match up with what you actually hear. This is a really interesting question. I'm glad that somebody asked it. I'll be going over kind of what you can do to make those two voices come together a little bit closer. I think this is something that bothers especially a lot of beginners, is that you have this voice inside your head and it's like, this is exactly what I should sound like when I start rapping. And then you go and record something and you're like, what? Is that really what I sound like? And then you have this disconnect, and a lot of people want to figure out how to close that gap, because in your mind you sound dope. When you listen to it, it sounds whack. Here's basically what's going on. The very first thing to think about is how much experience do you have listening to your voice being recorded? Because almost everybody, as soon as they're starting, or anyone having their voice recorded for the first time in any context, hears it played back and is just kind of, like I said before, like, what? Like, this can't be me. The difference is you have a very different perspective of where you're hearing yourself from, right? The way that the sound processes through your head is from a different position than anyone else in the whole world besides yourself hears. So you're going to have kind of a distorted perception of what your voice sounds like. And then when you hear the recording, it's going to be basically what the rest of the world hears. To you, that's going to sound super weird, but to everyone else, that's what you already sound like. So one of the big keys to getting your, mental voice and your actual external voice the same is really to listen to enough recordings and record often enough that you have a realistic understanding of what you sound like. Over time, as you record and listen, those two voices are naturally going to sync up a little bit closer. But if you haven't done much recording before, then you're going to immediately think that there's a huge disconnect, when there's really not. Like, you're not just making really weird sounds only when you record. You just have a totally different perspective from which to listen to yourself. That's what's really going to trip up most beginners. So just keep practicing, keep recording, listening to your voice, get more used to it. So the second thing you're going to want to look at is what kind of recording equipment you're using. I say this for the same reason. It really depends on the perspective that your voice is being taken from. So depending on what kind of equipment you have, that's going to influence how your voice sounds coming out. I'll give you a personal example. When I first started, my recordings were so nasally, and I kind of already have a nasally voice, so I expected that was just the case. But later, when I had a buddy come over who actually understood the equipment and tuned some stuff up, I had all my settings attuned to pick up even more nasal, like more of a nasal sound, which made my recordings just sound like I was just totally speaking out of my nose. Once I got a little bit more familiar with my equipment and I had him kind of help me set things up, I sounded a lot closer to what I thought I sounded like, and that was just because of the way I had the settings on the equipment. So based on what you're recording on, make sure that you understand kind of how to tweak things to make them sound a little bit closer to what you're looking for. You're also going to want to look at your mix for the same reasons. Basically, once the sound's all in, there's a lot of stuff that you can do to edit your voice and change it and make it sound different. When people make tracks, typically they don't just throw raw vocals on top of an instrumental. There's usually a lot of tweaking that goes on, emphasizing certain things, backup vocals, things changing around. So part of the reason you may not be hearing what's in your head is because you haven't messed around with the mixing settings enough to bring out the attributes that you want. This is assuming, again, back to step one, that you actually know what you sound like. You need to make sure that you understand the mixing process or can communicate that to whoever is helping you mix well enough that it sounds like what you want and emphasizes the traits you're looking to emphasize. The fourth and last thing to pay attention to is your delivery and your energy. You might have one kind of grand vision in your head, but then when you get on the microphone, you're not giving the same level of intensity that you've got in your mind. That just comes with more practice, kind of understanding the connection between your mind and your voice, your delivery. Basically, as you're recording, make sure you're giving the same level of energy. I say this in some of my other videos, but you need to dial in and get the same emotion to come out and be shown. If you feel like you can't quite, pull that energy that you're thinking of, try acting, try overdoing it. There's not really too much emotion that you can put in. I mean, obviously if you start bawling and you're trying to rap, that's not going to work out that great, but really amp up the energy and get theatrical and show kind of what you have in your mind, because half of it is knowing what you want to do, the other half is actually executing that presentation. Most likely what needs to happen is you just need to practice a little bit more and get more used to what your voice sounds like. I think a lot of beginners have kind of unrealistic expectations for what their first track or second track is going to sound like when they haven't recorded a lot, so their voice sounds weird. They don't really know their equipment or how to mix that well, so they can't bring out the attributes that they want. And they're used to listening to, you know, these high level rappers and like, wow, this guy sounds so good and mine sounds so weird. I mean, they have a ton of experience, really good equipment. They know exactly what they're doing. Don't use that to, you know, measure the voice in your head against what's projected into your recordings. Just keep practicing, and as you do, those two parts are going to naturally start to align and synchronize, and the voice in your head and the voice you hear on the recordings are going to sound a lot closer, but it just takes time and practice. That's all I've got for this video. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the box below. Beyond that, I've got a full 30-day course. I'll have a link down in the box below for a little bit of a discount. On top of that, I've also got a website, rapbetter.com. That's all. Keep practicing. See you next time. Don't forget to subscribe so you can stay up to date on the videos. And if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, put them down in the comment box and I'll get to them as quick as possible. See you guys.